5 seconds. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Damian G Sports, brought to you by Anchor.fm, your one-stop shop for podcast needs, as well as Big Gold Belt Media. Find them at BGB Group on Twitter and BigGoldBeltMedia.com. So, as in tradition, it's seeming with with Damian G Sports, we are starting to kind of find our groove here with discussing Dark Side of the Ring on Vice TV.
Yeah.
And for the past 2 weeks, I've had my friend, former UFC moderator, current photographer, and jack of all trades, I'm just DEO Dio, on to kind of pitch and catch with me in terms of what we've seen on Beyond the Ring, because he's one of the most intellectual persons to talk wrestling with and things outside of combat sports. So again, we decided to watch last night and the Brawl For All, which is a type of combat sport, if you really want to be granular about it, and comical, because him and I talk off air about stuff like this. It was something that we wanted to come back and talk about again. So the first thing, Dio, that kind of just caught my attention, and you brought this up, but it was something I noticed, was Vince Russo and Jim Cornette.
Yeah.
Their relationship
is weird.
It's not even I want to fight you. It's not even I want to beat you up. It's not even antagonistic. It's almost erogenous when you hear the amount of vitriol thrown by both people toward each other.
Yeah.
And part of my audience, for me being so crass, it's like, when you hate someone so much, you want to have sex with them. I don't know if anyone's ever had that. I know growing up, there's a term called hate fucking that we had in my neighborhood, but it's almost as if they hate each other so much that they're going to have sex with each other at some point. That's how much.
Because it's like, especially like Cornette, he is just so extra. And it's just like, all right, like, because yes, there is like old tropes about like
the wrestling business.
Well, not just wrestling business, but like in like stories where it's like you have two dudes that are like that hate each other so much that eventually it's like, oh yeah, they're gonna fight. These two have like they just need to go ahead and get it in and just get it over with. Because like at this point, like what is this? Because there was a while back, probably about 4 years ago, I think it was, where like Cornette like challenged Russo to fight. You know, you come to like, you know, the specified location, no weapons, just me and you, no camera crews, and we're gonna fight. I was like, nah, y'all are gonna fuck like this.
That's why I say no camera crews, yeah.
That's what I was like. So I was like, this is past the point of like, you know, if you guys are really about this action, as these folks in Brawl For All were, just show up and fight each other. Like,
don't advertise it, just do it.
Just do it, right? But yeah, it's strange. It's very strange.
So just their relationship is one little avenue that you see play out on the show. And if you're kind of a casual wrestling observer or wrestling fan, you won't really know the acts that Cornette grinds against Russo for unless you watch the show. You're like, oh, okay, this guy doesn't like him. No. It's years, man. For those decades, yes.
Decades, yeah.
So watching that unfold and narrated by Chris Jericho, which I don't know what his contractual thing with Vice is.
Oh, he's the
main narrator.
He's got to be the main narrator at this point.
Okay.
Which I actually enjoy him being the main narrator. He's got a good voice for it. Yeah, great storyteller.
So that's one thing that stood out. And then the second thing is something you brought up, and I'm going to let you kind of explain the point a little bit deeper, was it goes to show after watching the Brawl For All. For those who don't know, the Brawl For All was a 16-man, almost bordering on a tough man competition within.
No, it was absolutely a tough man competition. That's exactly what it was.
Yeah, but it wasn't as good as a tough man, a licensed tough man competition.
Right.
And it was 16 guys who were lower card, lower mid card, thrown together to kind of and it's been talked about in wrestling, and it was brought up on the show that it was almost a feeble attempt to get Dr. Death Steve Williams over with the audience. And we've known that for years as wrestling fans. We've known it for a long time, to get him over to be able to battle against Stone Cold Steve Austin. But the funny part is they're both named Steve Williams in real life. So that's actually pretty hilarious when you really think about it.
Yeah.
But the more the documentary went into it, it highlighted Bart Gunn. So, and Bart Gunn was another lower mid-card guy who was part of a tag team with Billy Gunn, Mr. Ass, if you followed Degeneration X, the Ass Man, whatever you want to say, and how Bart Gunn essentially shat all over WWF or WWE's plan to get Steve Williams over.
Yeah.
But the thing that really stuck out to you as someone who's been involved with combat sports is them motherfuckers can't fight.
No, they can't fight at all. Like this was so I went through and watched the matches on YouTube. Right. And looking at like the comments. So pro wrestling fans do not understand what real combat looks like.
Okay.
That is the biggest takeaway that I took from not only just that, but my years of, and for my my curriculum vitae. So I have been a fan of combat sports of all types since a kid. Pro wrestling was first, then boxing, then UFC, mixed martial arts, the UFC in its early ages, kickboxing, all those things. I trained mostly in kickboxing for a couple of years once I became an adult, and I moderated on one of the bigger mixed martial arts websites for about 4 or 5 years, I think it was. So this has been something that's been part of my life for a long time. These motherfuckers couldn't fight for shit. The way, like, if you look at Bradshaw specifically, cannot fight.
No.
Like, he couldn't fight at all. He lucked out in, it's like, he's a big, powerful dude swinging for the fences. That's how he was able to beat most of these people. And he swarms. Even if you are a skilled fighter, somebody that is swarming you, they have a chance to knock you out just because haymaker after haymaker is gonna, and he didn't have technique. Most of his punches. So if you know the mechanics of punching, just doing this, these are arm punches.
Yes.
There is no power behind that. I could sit here and punch somebody in the chest like this all day long.
Like Rock'em Robots.
Right. Like everybody, because people, that damn 1-inch punch shit from Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
First off, there is no such thing as the 1-inch punch. He never was just 1 inch. If you actually go back and look at the tapes, it's about a good foot that he actually comes back and then leaps forward to hit these people. Plus, he had willing participants. That's another thing about mixed martial arts, right? You had people that were under the spell, essentially. That's why you see the dudes that have like the key fighters that are doing this shit, shooting imaginary fireballs at people, and everybody's flipping all over. Right. Willing participants that believe that are under this spell, essentially, of these people. So that's one thing there. But with Bradshaw, he was just like, it was just arm punches in your face, so you can't see. So that's how he was able to catch people, because when they can't see, and next thing you know, you throw an overhand haymaker. It's going to KO a lot of folks, especially when you have a dude that damn big. Like, there's a thing in mixed martial arts and in boxing, mixed martial arts specifically, because it's a 3-dimensional sport as opposed to a 1-dimensional sport like boxing is, where you can get knocked out at any fucking point. It just doesn't matter. Like, knockouts happen in transition. So and when I say transition, I'm talking like when people are grappling on the ground and one person gets up and they'll, in the time from getting down to getting up, they will knock somebody out. Like in that, just because somebody got caught. Anytime you have anybody over 200 pounds throwing fists, the likelihood of getting knocked out is high.
Okay.
So in this situation, because like if you look at mixed martial arts, boxing, all that, far fewer knockouts in the lower weight classes. It's one of the reasons why you don't see as many knockouts in like women's mixed martial arts and boxing. Is weight more than anything else. Not because they lack the power. It's more so weight, and they have shorter rounds, so they can't get into a groove like men can because they've got 5-minute rounds and what have you. But that's neither here nor there. Anyway, back to this. These people couldn't fight. You had people that were actual martial artists. So here's the bracket. You had the people that were in it. Steve Blackman. So if you remember Mr. Steve Blackman,
yes.
yeah. Mark Marrow, who was a legitimate Golden Gloves champion boxer.
Right.
Right. Mark Canterbury, who we know as Henry Godwin.
Mm-hmm.
Bradshaw, JBL. Brackus, who is just a bodybuilder that the
bodybuilder dude. Mm-hmm.
That was one of, Vince's things that he jacked off to. Savio Vega, also known as
Quang,
the
Puerto Rican ninja.
Darren Drozdoff, Road Warrior Hawk, Bart Gunn, Bob Holly, the Corbecker Pierre, or as we know him now, PCO.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Death Steve Williams, the Godfather, Papa Shango, Mustafa, whatever you want to call him. Dan Severn,
another fighter,
another pro fighter. 8 Ball, who was one of the Harris brothers.
Yes, one of the Harris twins.
Which, if I remember correctly, there's some white supremacy
in their
stuff going on. And Too Cold Scorpio.
That was the one name that really, for me, Too Cold
Scorpio. This is how you know these were people taking a calculated risk because they were like, yo, if I win this shit, I'm gonna get a push. No, you're not. As we found out later on in the shit. So you had people that aren't actually fighters coming out here to actually fight.
Mm-hmm.
Off rip, bad idea. Horrible idea. Like, this is like bum fights.
Oh, goodness Lord.
This is tough, man. Like, so in pro wrestling, there was this mystique of these people being tough guys, and Ming Haku was out here pulling eyeballs out, blah 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 blah. This is that and the other. Which you got to take a lot of that with grains of salt, because you have to build mythos in order for these characters to have these grandiose personalities and such, right? So would I fight Ming? Hell no.
I would not fight Haku under any circumstances.
No, like I've fought Polynesians before. It's not fun because they're built different, very different from other people. But yeah, like you have people. So sure, Steve Blackman, an actual martial artist. Mark Marrow, an actual boxer as well. Dr. Death was a high level amateur wrestler.
Yeah.
So you actually have these people that have actual skill. And Dan Severn, right? Dan Severn as well. Ken basically like, yeah, we want everybody in this except Dan Severn and Ken Shamrock, because they know how to fight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hindsight for me, Dan Severn would have probably got melted by a bunch of these dudes. He wasn't that great of a striker.
Okay.
Great wrestler, great grappler, not a good striker. Him and Ken Shamrock had like a grudge thing in the UFC back in the day. It's a whole bunch of inside baseball stuff, I guess you'd say there. So you have all these people that can't fight. You have one man in the Quebecer Pierre or PCO that only had one eye.
Which I didn't know the eye patch wasn't for show.
No, he didn't. He had one eye. One eye.
Okay, which explains why PCO does the one eye thing now still.
The one eye thing now, right. So off rip. So if you don't know anything about people that don't like, so we as humans have binocular vision, right?
Yes.
So it's because it's to like when you are predators, a lot of times that's the type of vision that you have, right? Prey tends to have eyes more too on the side. So think of cows, horses, things of that nature, so that they have a wider range of view.
Huh. Okay.
Right. With us, we look on because we have been hunters for a long time and such, right? Also, with binocular vision, it helps with depth perception.
Okay.
So like if you close one eye and then try to reach for stuff on your desk and see it's different. It's not the same. You'll reach
Right in
for
front
stuff,
of you.
yeah, right in front of you. You'll reach for things and be like, "Oh shit, I actually did not grab it."
Oh, I didn't grab it. There was something right there. I didn't grab it.
Right,
Okay.
because your body doesn't have that secondary, eye to help gauge distance. So, like for instance, Sugar Ray Leonard had an eye injury that ended his career as a boxer. You cannot box with one eye because even though the brain will eventually compensate for it,
Yes.
there's nothing that's going to make it the same as having two eyes. So off rip, he wouldn't, if this were an actual sanctioned event, they would have never let PCO do that shit. He would have never been able to do that because it was a tragedy waiting to happen, essentially, right?
And that's what everybody said. That's what the bookers or all the Vince McMahon's yes men backstage. And this was pitched by Vince Russo as a way to generate shock TV because he was a Jerry Springer fan, even though he was part of the writing team, but he didn't really care for wrestling.
But also because he had a grudge against JVL.
Also, like yes, because
that's the most insane part. I understand the shock value TV because at the time that's where everybody was going for. Right. Jerry Springer. Once Jerry Springer became Jerry Springer and it was shock value TV, everybody in that same realm did the same thing. Ricky Lake became Shock TV because Ricky Lake went from being normal, regular
talk show host
to it being ridiculous nonsense, having strippers on and all of that stuff. Hell, Phil Donahue. This is blast from the past, and a lot of you young kids.
Won't know what that is. Yeah.
Phil Donahue, Sally Jesse Raphael, in the last years on air also turned to shock value as well because that's what was selling at the time. Mm-hmm. Everything was all about the sizzle. You got to have the sizzle. And that was very endemic of the time. So I understand on that end doing it. But the fact that you did this just to humble one person.
Yeah.
You put 16 people's lives in jeopardy by doing this and ended a bunch of their careers in the process of doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So Dr. Death, the person that was supposed to be the winner of all of this. So Mark Merrow lost via decision. I think probably because he was like, you know what, this is dumb. I don't want to. What's the point of trying to do this and then getting injured? And I think a lot of the top stars at the time were like, why would I do this?
This makes no sense.
This makes no sense. This is stupid. So Dr. Death injured, right? He was injured in the second round, right?
Yeah, so against Bart Gunn.
Mm-hmm. Bart Gunn, right? So at the time, Bart Gunn and Bob Holly were tag team partners.
Yep. The new Midnight Express.
Midnight Express or whatever it was, right?
Yes.
And they had to fight. So they were like, oh yeah, we just picked the names out of hat. No, you didn't.
They said Savio Vega was the dude holding the fucking the bag or the hat that they were pulling names out of.
I call bullshit on that. They were just like, oh yeah, we want to see what happens here. So they fought and Bart Gunn won. And they had to go sleep in the same hotel the same night and then tag team like days later. Awkward as hell, right? If you've ever fought a friend, I've done that before.
So
it's very awkward. It's very, very awkward after the fact.
Because how are you supposed to keep a friendship with someone who either whooped your ass or you whooped their ass? And you're
like you can patch things up eventually once the mental wounds have healed. But it's rough.
But to sleep in the same hotel room,
feet away from each other, shit. So you have that. Then he moved on, and Dr. Death, Steve Williams, fought PCO, One-Eyed Man. So off rip, people knew, okay, he got the softball because he literally got to fight a one-eyed
man. Mm-hmm.
So then he goes and they were like, oh yeah, basically they had told Bart Gunn that oh yeah, there's no real chance of you beating Dr. Death. And he was like, oh really? Cool. That put a battery in his back. And he went out there and melted Steve Williams. not even like kind of sort of. So one, Steve Williams ripped his quad in the match because he actually
tore his hamstring.
Tore his hamstring, right? So he actually took down Dr. Death, who Dr. Death is an accomplished wrestler.
Yes.
So like the fact that that happened is like that can kind of tell you when you are out of practice as a combatant, things go weird. And when the thing about pro wrestling is you're doing the same thing over and over and over again.
Yes.
There's no real chaos in this because all of this is scripted and choreographed.
Yes.
In actual combat, there is no script. It is a chaotic situation that is almost never static. Everything is constantly in motion. In that, if you're not used to somebody shooting for a takedown on you, you're not gonna be ready for that. And when you do that, you tense up, muscles are gonna tear, especially if you are out of practice from this for a very long time. And with Steve Williams, that was the case.
And you could tell. I remember watching that fight, and I know a lot of you who are listening have gone back and rewatched it. Mm-hmm. He looked out of sorts early on. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised if backstage people were telling him, hey, we're going to line up these tomato cans for you and just do what you do.
Oh, yeah. They definitely gassed him up. They definitely gassed him up. I mean, I'm pretty sure there was probably talk because he was JR's boy.
Mm-hmm. And they tried to downplay that in the documentary. And I didn't know how close they were until really watching this documentary. Like, oh, you guys really are thick as thieves. You got your boy in the door.
Yep.
Got you.
And it didn't end well for him.
It did not. Like, he was knocked the F out.
Knocked the fuck out. Which was a thing that happened a lot in this. Like, because like when I tell you he melted that man, it was complete. He was out cold. And like the thing is, Bart Gunn's a big dude, right? This is a very, very large man.
It's about a 6'3", 245. Yeah, it's a big dude.
Like, build height was 6'4", 264.
Oh, yeah, see, even bigger. All right.
That's a massive individual. Even if he's a couple inches shorter and maybe 20 pounds lighter. That's a big motherfucker.
Mm-hmm.
Period. Right? And when you are just swinging bombs like that, you're going to catch somebody. It's bad. It's going to be bad. Right? Like, you had the Godfather fighting Dan Severn. Dan Severn won, but withdrew. So the Godfather went on. Mm-hmm. And so Too Cold Scorpio beat the white supremacist dude. He moved on to the Godfather. Godfather won. Godfather faced Bart Gunn. Bart Gunn melted him too. And this was the thing as a kid I didn't understand because I didn't know anything about I didn't understand what knockouts were. I just remember somebody got hit and somebody fell, right? It wasn't until I got older and started to understand the science of combat sports. It was like, ooh, it's bad. And like looking at this now, this is a horrible, horrible idea. You do not want to give concussions to your performers.
There's enough concussions in wrestling
as it is now. Like, and the thing is, like, when the Godfather got knocked out, he got knocked out bad.
Well, he said he couldn't feel his legs when he was in the corner.
Legs when he was right, and he was like, "My legs are gone." That's a bad sign.
That's a really bad sign.
Like in boxing, you go back to your corner and you tell them, "I don't have my legs." They throw the towel in. That's it. Like it's that there's no more going forward. And like they showed what his leg looked like later on. His leg looked like a fucking eggplant. Mm-hmm. Like it was bad. And like when he dropped, so there's 3 ways that you tend to fall when you get knocked out. One is how I say you get melted.
Yes.
And that's because it literally looks like you melt.
Like ragdolled.
Ragdoll. When you get hit, your body loses all, and you just see somebody just kind of drop in like a pile of goo, like muscle and bone, right? Then you have when people stiffen up, like you'll see somebody get hit, and then you just see them like lock up and fall backwards and fall forward, right? And when that happens, that's actually called a fencing response.
Okay.
is when your arms are locked out like that. You see it a lot in football, especially like usually the harder the hit,
The arms go up.
the arms go up. You see people like doing this. That's the
Yep.
fencing response. And then the other is like when people get hit, and you'll see they'll get hit, and then you'll see their head just swing back, and then they hit the ground.
Oh,
right.
Mm-hmm.
So when that happens, the impact is already bad enough that you got hit, right? But the worst part is when you hit the ground again, or when your head hits the ground, because you usually hit the ground with crazy ton of force,
right,
when that happens. So that's something that you do not want to happen. And the Godfather, when he got hit, he just kind of fell, boom, but like fell face first. Later on, as we'll see, when like Bart Gunn, when he eventually won, he hit Bradshaw, he hit Bradshaw with some shit. That was it was like he hit Bradshaw, and Bradshaw hit the ground, and was the moment that happens, fight gets called.
Done. Mm-hmm.
It should have been called off that first. That's it. Like, of course, it never should have happened to begin with, but he got hit. He's still punching. He's glassy-eyed, gets up. And the thing is, this wasn't sanctioned. So they didn't have actual boxing refs. An actual boxing ref would have called it off right there. The ref, who's never refereed anything before, walked up to him and was like, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay?" And JBL just said, "That's it.
That's it."
It was just like, yeah. And I was like, oh God, he's gonna die. And next thing, Bart Gunn just goes over, wham, and he's gone. So you're already concussed.
Yes.
And a bad concussion at that. Like, anytime you don't know where you are, can't really react like that, like, bad. And the thing about this in this documentary, how Vince Russo was just giddy over there.
I can speak to the giddiness, because if you've ever met a traditional New Yorker, and when they say bro and the accent comes out, you know they are legitimately enjoying themselves. So, and he's saying while watching this on replay that as a viewer, he thinks, to quote Vince McMahon, this is some good shit. Like,
good shit. No, but then later on in the episode, it was like, I kind of feel bad. I don't want anybody to get hit like that. Motherfucker, yes, you do. You literally orchestrated the shit.
Just because you wanted one dude to catch the ass whoop.
Right. You just wanted to see one person catch the fade, and you set all this up. What? You ended Steve Williams' career, essentially. Effectively ended his career. And the WWF just signed him.
Yep.
And that's the thing. Honestly, Steve Williams was never going to be a star to begin with. He just wasn't. Like, he was a hold off from a bygone era.
Right. And if we go by WWF and WWE's history, anyone who's gotten over big in Japan, for the most part, tends to flail and fail here on the main roster or in WWF and WWE. So Steve Williams, no matter how much posturing people in the back were saying, Cornettes and the Jim Rosses, no, it wasn't going to work. He had no personality other than, I can whoop your butt. That's it. Right. He couldn't talk on the mic. He wasn't very convincing at all. He just sounded like who he was.
Right.
A football playing guy, tough guy from the South.
Right.
That's it for that time.
With
a mullet.
And this is the end of the 90s. That ain't gonna, it's not gonna work.
So when Jim Cornette, and I'll let you get in after I say this part. For Jim Cornette to be holding a grudge on Bart Gunn and Vince Russo, more so Vince Russo, saying, hey, you cost us $5 million. I'm sorry. I seen Dr. Death in Japan. I've seen him briefly in WCW or NWA, whichever one it was at the time. He was not worth $5 million. Whatever mega fight you thought him and Stone Cold were going to have.
Yeah. And he definitely didn't make no goddamn $5 million. There's no way in hell they paid him $5 million. Like, that was probably purported revenue that they might have gotten down the line, but there's no way they would have paid $5 million.
From who?
Steve Austin and the top people at the top weren't even making that kind of money back then.
When was this? This was in 2000. What year was this?
Brawl for All was.
I'm thinking 2002.
No, it's 98.
98. Okay. So 98 was the years of like Sunday Night Heat, WWE New York type stuff. So you had the mainstays at the top, Rock, Austin, Triple A. I guess they were on the ascent. So all you had was Austin, Taker. I think Kane had debuted by then. So where the hell were you going to slot Dr. Death Steve Williams against Stone Cold Steve Austin?
Yeah, you're not. You have a person that has no personality with one of the biggest personalities in pro wrestling of all time. This ain't gonna work. So this would have been like a 1 month program, and then they'd be like, "Well, gotta throw that away."
Well, it goes back to the Hogan days when they would build generic heel flavor of the month.
Yeah,
just Hogan either at Saturday night's main event or at a random pay-per-view, or like they did with Cena, where I will always go to my grave and saying the Mark Henry one-off program with Cena after the fake retirement was bull. You should have gave the title to Henry,
right?
After all that good stuff that he was.
Froze.
Speech. It's like, okay, after that's all over, rinse and repeat with somebody else.
Right.
So for me, Dr. Death Steve Williams is nothing.
No, he was nothing. He was never going to be anything.
So he was going to be anything. So to give heat to Bart Gunn, and you know what? To the Bruce Pritchards of the world and the Jim Cornettes and everyone backstage who was clowning Bart Gunn, I'm glad Bart Gunn knocked out Dr. Death. I'm sorry.
Like, you guys need to learn. Like, this was one of those things where when you live inside of a bubble and you start to believe the myths that you created, right? So you guys have been on some, these people are legit tough guys. It's like, nah, this ain't it. This ain't it. And like, because I remember a couple years back, I started seeing folks saying, oh yeah, they should bring back Brawl for All. I was like, no, don't do that, because all your faves are gonna get their ass beat.
They're gonna catch the fade.
Every single one of them, everybody at the top of. Let me see. Let's go to WWE.com and see who the champions are.
So what I found out today from What Culture, apparently a random writer former writer of WWE tweeted out last night, that the Brawl for All would have been brought back a couple of years ago.
Wouldn't be surprised by that.
That Vince kind of thought about it. Hey, maybe we should bring this back.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, it's a bad idea. Like, they would have to script it. It would have to be scripted. They would absolutely have to choreograph.
It was going to be with NXT personnel when NXT was first coming.
And that's bad, because you have a bunch of mixed martial artists down in NXT. Y'all want to see some people get fucked up bad? That's what you do.
With so many mixed martial artists, or just guys who could fight.
Yeah.
In NXT at the time. No, just no.
You don't want to do that. That's bad. Like, looking at who the champions are now, right? So on the main roster, you've got Braun Strowman and Drew McIntyre. Let me explain something to you. No matter how goddamn big or muscular you are, if you have somebody that actually knows how to throw a punch, they are going to turn these people. They are going to change their lives for the worst.
Right.
All these people like Becky Lynch, Bayley, Sami Zayn, Andrade, Street Profits, Miz and Morrison, Alexa Bliss, Rob Gronkowski, whose brain is Swiss cheese right now, Adam Cole, Charlotte Flair, Keith Lee, Jordan Devlin, and the Broserweights. Also Walter, Kaylee Ray, and Gallus. So the only person that has actual combat experience is in the Broserweights, in Matt Riddle.
Matt Riddle.
Let me understand. Like, I would put Matt Riddle against 4 of these people at one time, and he would end them. Like, I don't think, like, people really do not, like, because you see this stuff all the time. Oh, Randy Orton could whoop somebody's ass and beat him with an RKO. No, and no. This is no. Like, I know you see, like, because the old ad thing with WWE, the Undertaker is the best pure striker.
In WWE. Yeah. Uh-huh.
No,
No.
no, and no. Because all those punches, when you come over like this to like have the impact, that's not generating any type of force.
No.
Right? So when you like all punching mechanics specifically, power doesn't come from up here.
Okay.
Doesn't come from the torso. You have very special people like Deontay Wilder that can throw just from the torso and have insane otherworldly power. But that's a once in a generation type of thing.
Okay.
You do not have people that can, because with him, his technique's god awful most of the time. But he's got the touch of death, basically. But with most people, sitting there swinging like that's not going to do anything, right? All these, when you see him punching like that, or the rocks, slappy punches and shit. Nah, that's not how it is. When you punch, you're actually, everything comes from your ass, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's where power comes from the ground and your ass. You have to be planted for that stuff. When you come over, you don't just, it's not just you actually come over. There is mechanics to all of this stuff. A hook, there is mechanics to these things, and that's bad posture that I just used. But like when it comes to like this stuff, yeah, these people don't have that because it's not pretty. It's not pretty in a combat entertainment way. Right. And also it's hard to pull those. So if you're throwing something with actual technique, power comes with it. It's really hard to pull those types of punches. But when you do all this
overhands and
flailing, you can do that, right? Look at The Rock. You can see he's basically just lightly slapping these people for all those years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like, if they brought the Brawl for All back, it would be bad because you're gonna have people that don't like that, people that the fans don't like. So Baron Corbin's gonna beat the shit out of a bunch of people
because he's a Golden Gloves,
and he is a decorated Brazilian jiu-jitsu grappler.
Okay,
that's a bad idea, very bad idea. You've got a Chad Gable who is going to grapple people to death because he is an like anytime you have anybody that's like Olympic level in a combat sport, don't just, it's smart to just stay away from them.
Okay.
Just don't do it, right? Like it's gonna end up bad for you. All the mixed martial artists and such, like one half of the Authors of Pain. I want to say it's Akam, or is it Razor? I don't know. Whichever the Albanian one is, he is a mixed martial artist and had a pretty decent record. He's going to beat the hell out of a bunch of the people on the roster. So you're going to have a bunch of people that people don't like winning because they actually know what the hell they're doing. And on top of that, CTE, you do not want to put people in, like they would have in this day and age, you would have to sanction this. If you wanted to make it real, you'd have to sanction it. No sanctioning body is going to allow this to happen.
What about with headgear?
No, they're still not going to do it.
Really?
Still not going to do it. Anytime you have someone that has no combat experience in something, they're never going to let it happen. Like people can bring up Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather. That was an exhibition match. It wasn't actually a thing. That's why it was able to happen. And in Conor McGregor, he does have combat sports experience. Is it boxing experience? No, but he does have high level combat sports experience. So that's kind of, they're going to give some leeway for stuff like that.
Right.
But otherwise, hell no. There's no way in hell that they would allow, somebody who has a decorated record like Akam to go and then fight someone who has no combat sports training whatsoever. It's a bad idea. That's how people get hurt. That's how people get brain damage that you can't come back from because, it's just bad.
And to Russo's credit, he did say, as you said toward the end, what he now knows, he wishes he can go back and tell his former self about CTE and head trauma and injuries and things of that nature. Not a good idea, Chief. And again, he got what he wanted. He got Bradshaw getting knocked the F out.
Right.
Great. Cool. But WWF at the time said, okay, well, and eventually when you think about Bradshaw being pushed years later, maybe that's why they didn't pull the plug, thinking maybe we can make Bradshaw into somebody, if he won or if the Godfather won. But the whole underdog story with Bart Gunn, it's you keep giving this man gasoline on his fire.
Right.
You really think he's going to stop? Especially since you already picked the Shawn Michaels to his Mario Jannetty and Billy Gunn to be the one, because that was one of his gimmicks. So you had him teaming as a reject Midnight Express gimmick from the 80s bought to the late 90s.
Yeah.
That's not going to work, because they tried that with Well Done. They tried that with the Beverly Brothers.
Yeah.
So things like that didn't work anymore. So Bart Gunn's like, listen, man, like you were saying earlier, they had nothing to lose.
Right.
And apparently they were getting like 10 G's or something like that per round.
Yeah, 10 G's per round, which is like, back then, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
In the 90s, that was a lot of money.
Hopefully cash. 10 G's.
Yeah, but still, like, that's a rough thing. And the thing was, so after all of this was said and done, they didn't book him for anything.
Nothing.
He didn't get a push. They didn't know how to use him. Like, they could have easily been like, had him have a tough guy gimmick and done that, because he's a big dude. And
it's like with the Big Show when he has the KO punch. Like, they could have gave him something like that.
The KO punch, right? They could have easily done that, because we saw him melt multiple people in a tournament, right? It was right there on the table. But
a shoot tournament, not a fake tournament.
Just because Vince McMahon, if he doesn't like you, he's not going to push you, right? So because Vince McMahon is the fucking petty bitch that he is, decided to punish Bart Gunn essentially
by booking him with Butterbean.
And for those of you that don't know who Butterbean is, Butterbean, also known as Eric Esch, is a prize fighter. He became big off of like the Tough Man contest.
The Tough Man competitions. There was a game called Tough Man Sports for EA Sports with Butterbean as one of the competitors.
As one of the competitors, yeah. And Butterbean's not the type of person that you want to fight. You just don't. Especially if you have no technique. And Butterbean said, hey, had Bart Gunn went out there and brawled with me, he had a 50-50 chance to win. But Bart Gunn, they had him go out and train as a boxer.
First mistake.
You're not going to learn how to box in 12 weeks.
Nope.
You're just not. You do have some people that just have innate understandings of mechanics, but even still, you're not going to, because it was the moment that fight started, Bart Gunn went out there and Butterbean hit him with one punch and he completely spun around. This is it. It's over. It's game over. This man is going to go out here and die in front of all these people. And Butterbean caught him one good time. Wow. That man fell. And he was like, I hope he doesn't get up. Bart Gunn, being the hard-headed son of a bitch that he was, got up. And Butterbean was like, all right, cool. I'm going to go out here and I'm going to just have to melt him. And he melted him. And it was like, this was just one of the most egregious things possible. Like this is some type of stuff. Like, so imagine your boss at work doesn't like you. So he figures out a way to legally get your ass whooped.
Yep. For his amusement.
Think about that. That is what this is. So like when people are like, oh, Vince McMahon is a genius. No, he's not.
He's a petty man.
He's a petty man who is not in touch with reality. And the thing about this was, so like Vince Russo was like, oh, I wish I knew what I knew now. Everybody that knew anything about combat sports back then would have told you this was a bad idea. Right? Eric Esch was like, yo,
this is a bad idea.
This is a bad idea. I'm going to knock your boy out. No two ways about it. And anybody in boxing, they didn't know what CTE was. Back then, it was called being punch drunk or dementia pugilistica.
Yes.
that's been a thing that people have known about for a very long time. Close to 100 years, people have known what that was. That is why the term punch drunk even became a thing. Why put anybody in there at risk for that? People knew what that was in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
People knew what that was in the 80s, in the 70s, 60s, 50s, 40s, 30s, 20s, and 10s. So this was one of the most egregious things that has been done in WWE history. This was a microcosm of everything that was wrong with pro wrestling at the time, because you had people that were still holding on to these gimmicks from a bygone decade and trying to keep them going, right, even though they've already moved on to bigger and better things. They've already moved on to the Rocks. They've already moved on to Stone Cold Steve Austin's, the Mankind's, the Kane's, the Undertaker's, like the Undertaker that they had now. Like, you've moved on to these different things, right? So just a dude in a singlet with a mullet ain't gonna fucking cut it no more. So yeah, like, it was just a bad.
No, all in all, yes, it was a bad idea.
Bad idea.
And I remember watching it as a kid, thinking it was actually pretty cool,
right?
Because I did like Tough Man. I knew who Butterbean was, so yeah. I knew about Tough Man. I knew about his boxing career because he used to fight on USA, Tuesday Night Fights.
Yeah.
USA. Do you remember Tuesday Night Fights? Yeah.
I remember a lot of stuff from USA.
So
USA up all night.
All night, yes. Rhonda Shear.
Rhonda Shear, my
God. But in regards and this is a good time to let you know you're listening to Damian G Sports on behalf of Big Gold Bell Media and on behalf of Anchor.fm
on Twitter. But Rhonda Shear was premium milk back in the 90s.
USA. La Femme Nikita. Uh-huh.
Wow.
Remember the original La Femme Nikita? Yes. Didn't they have a zombie thing too? No, a vampire thing. They had a vampire thing.
Okay, so this actually works with what we're talking about, because the 90s, the late 90s especially, was all about, like, mid to late 90s was all about sex and violence.
Yes.
So everything had a late night show with a super sexy host, right? Yes. Elvira had a show for a while.
Yes.
Who, she does not age. I think she's an actual vampire, honestly. She does not age. It is wild. You can go look at Elvira right now. She still looks the same like she did in the 80s. It's insane. But anyway. So yeah, like,
so it was risque, no matter what, for the time.
Everything was risque. Every channel was risque. Baywatch had to be risque, because you had Baywatch, and then it was like Baywatch Dark or whatever it was, where like there was like an electric eel episode and like a zombie. There was like a spinoff of Baywatch.
That I knew. They had like Baywatch Hawaii or some joint.
No, this was the Baywatch spinoff was some wild nonsense, because
was that with Hasselhoff and the other dude who we talked about last week, his right hand man that was riding the ATV?
I think so. Let me see.
Who was the assistant coach for Herman Boone on Remember the Titans?
Yeah. So Baywatch Hawaii. White Thunder.
We're going down a rabbit hole here, folks.
Yeah. Baywatch Nights is what it was called.
Uh-huh.
And it got crazy because they didn't have anything to really talk about. So really do, because Baywatch was essentially just based off of looking at Pamela Anderson and the other women that were on the show, honestly.
Yes.
So yeah, it was
a simpler time back then.
It was a simpler time. But yes, everything was sex and violence, which Brawl For All was violence.
Yes.
That is why they went with it.
Right.
So
continuing with the fact that not only did Bart Gunn get his lunch handed to him on WrestleMania in front of the world, he still had almost a sense of grace about it, knowing that, listen, this is my only chance to make something of this amalgam of nonsense.
Right.
And that was his 15 seconds of fame, because after that, where he went? Nowhere.
Nowhere.
We didn't hear from Bart Gunn after that.
And
So,
we're getting in the States. Yep.
and it wraps up with him kind of talking about what could have been and how he might have had a chance to get a rematch with Butterbean because he was doing MMA briefly, and they both beat the same opponent, and Bart did it in faster time than Butterbean did.
And the dude that he knocked out was Cabbage was just a big, solid, tough dude.
Just a big dude.
The fact that Bart Gunn knocked him out, knowing what I know about Cabbage at the time, that was impressive.
Okay.
And to do it as quickly as he did was pretty impressive. Like Cabbage he's what you call a journeyman, in that he's not great, but he's skilled enough that he's going to beat a lot of people.
Especially if you don't expect him to beat you.
Right. You have journeymen, then you have gatekeepers. Those are the things. So Cabbage was, if you beat the journeyman, then you can move up to the gatekeepers, and then you get into contention for like top tens and things of that nature. And for him to beat somebody like Cabbage at the time, big half Polynesian dude, it's a lot.
And as you talked about earlier on the show about Polynesians being a different kind of
built different.
So the rest of the show documents that and what could have been, and then the rest of the show before that kind of heightens around or circles around everyone's experience with the Brawl For All. Now, the most fascinating ones aside from Bart Gunn that were highlighted were the Godfather, Charles Wright, and Darren Drozdoff. Because the Godfather, you would think on paper, also would be another one that would have gone far. But what we find out during the show was, number one, he used to beat up pimps, which, considering his gimmick of the Godfather, hilarious, being that he loved the gimmick so much. That was one thing I learned from that. Number two,
he smoked weed every day.
Smoke weed every day.
Every day.
With Gilbert.
With Gilbert.
That was so random. Hearing he smoked weed with Gilbert, and Butterbean was like, "No, I'm good." And he's like, "I'm gonna knock your boy out. Like, I'm gonna hurt this guy."
Right.
But knowing that the Godfather smoked weed every day, and he smoked before every fight of the Brawl For All, and the icing on that cake was his wife was mad at him. First off, didn't know he had a wife.
Yeah.
Wife was mad at him that he lost a shot at the $50,000 purse.
Yep.
And he challenged him to say, "You were smoking weed, weren't you?"
Mm-hmm.
If that is not a ride or die wife right there to be like, "You were smoking too much weed that night, weren't you?"
Right.
And him to laugh it off. And the Godfather doesn't age either. Charles Wright does not age. I don't know what.
Great.
He looks amazing. Whatever Papa Shango abilities he's used in real life.
I think he really did do some voodoo, bro.
Some voodoo. So him highlighting legit tough guy.
Uh-huh.
And then we get to Darren Drozdoff, who, for those who knew him as Droz, Puke, ran with the Legion of Doom briefly when they had this weird alcoholism hawk angle.
Yeah.
And then he was, what wound up happening is that Droz fought JBL
and won.
And everyone said he won.
He won that shit.
But JBL got put through to the next round, which again goes to show you with JBL's longevity in the company.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of those people where they didn't pull the Brawl For All when Vince had every opportunity to every week. They could have pulled it. But when you get to the finals and JBL is one of the two participants, knowing what you know about his legitimacy in WWF and E, of course they kept him in.
Right.
They would have pushed him sooner had he won.
Yeah.
So the fact that Droz talks about that fight, and then Droz talks about him being paralyzed in wrestling, and then they show D'Lo Brown, who I will always say D'Lo Brown is one of the most underrated professional wrestlers of the Attitude Era.
Yeah.
That maybe guys like me who weren't big on, sports entertainment, guys like me who didn't care about if the dude looked like an Adonis or anything like that.
Right.
But who could entertain and work.
Yep.
And D'Lo checked. And if you talk to Jim Cornette goes on record and says how much he loved D'Lo Brown. Yep. A lot of people love D'Lo Brown.
D'Lo Brown was dope. Like, and he's legit seems like one of the just good dudes.
Well, because he was, and on top of him being, really repentant and just really thoughtful of how Droz was paralyzed in a match with him, and they both claim that they've both hashed it out. They wish each other well, and no animosity after all these years.
Right.
But for me watching at home, and this is where I turn on, Dr. Damian hat or therapist Damian hat, seeing draws, even if it's for the cameras, even be able to muster the I'm alive, I'm making jokes like I'm alive, I'm kicking. Well, I'm not really kicking, but
kicking. I was like,
yeah. Okay, my man has perspective.
Right.
And the hand he was dealt, and he still made, just like Bart Gunn. Bart Gunn at the end of the documentary, you can say he's made peace with it.
Right.
And he made the best of whatever situation was thrown at him.
Right.
And I still feel to this day, the way you hear the JRs talk, the way you hear Cornette talk, they are still so salty
about this stuff.
About this because Dr. Death
didn't win.
Less so about Russo being Russo, except for Cornette. Like we said earlier this episode, they're probably star-crossed lovers at some point.
Yeah.
They need to just smash and get it over with.
They just need to go ahead and clear the pipes.
Clear the pipes, literally. But you could just tell there's so much salt about Dr. Death not winning, even in the documentary.
Right.
Come on, man. How many years has it been? Let it go. Let it go.
Right. Like this, because this was at this point 22 years ago. Let it go. You can't change what happened. Let that shit go.
If Draws could
make peace,
paralyzed, make peace
with that. That is, but you can't let go of something from back in the day because a plan didn't go like you wanted to. Get the fuck out of here. Like, yeah, just get the fuck out of here.
And then you hear Cornette essentially complain, and it's Cornette, what else is new, about how Vince Russo just, when he wanted to wring his neck, why do you want to fight me over wrestling? It's because wrestling's all Jim Cornette has.
Yeah.
He's got nothing else.
That's the sad part about it. Is like when he said this shit stuff, and I was like,
that's what I felt.
Like wrestling is his love. That's his one true thing. I don't think he loves wrestling more than his wife and kids, probably. Mm-hmm. Easily. And like, yeah, no, that all that stuff there is just like this whole thing. It was like, you people are crazy. It's one thing. The bookers, that is. Because the thing is, like, if you have a bunch of people that are low on the ladder, right? And they're offered an opportunity where they could possibly become a star, of course they're going to take it.
They're going to take it.
They're going to
I would.
It, right? Like, they're going to take it. And they are already in an industry that they know they're destroying their bodies for.
Right.
Let's go ahead and get into a couple fights going to be.
No different.
Right? Yeah. It's no different to them. They didn't know the consequences, of course, But yeah, this was just a whole, just all of it. Massive clusterfuck.
One of the reasons my shirt, Fustercluck. Yes, it was a massive Fustercluck. Yes.
This is why I keep on telling people that Attitude Era is easily one of the worst eras of pro wrestling. Period.
And you've been saying that since I've known you, so
it's not good. It's not good because people only like to cherry pick the stuff at the top. You can't do that. Like if a tree only bears three good like pieces of fruit, and everything else is rotten, it's not a good tree. Like it's just not. You can't only be like, oh yeah, well you have The Rock and Austin and Mankind. Yeah, that was the stuff. That was a very small portion of the Attitude Era.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very, very small portion of the Attitude Era. You have the Brawl For Alls. You have the ridiculous bra and panty matches. You had so many of the dogs getting cooked and fed to people.
Yeah, the dog kennel matches.
Mm-hmm. The dog kennel matches. The
boss man got hung.
The boss man got hung. The boss man dragged Big Show's
dad's coffin.
Like, you had all of this trash. Like, and even the fucking Sable and Mark Merrow feud, trash. It was horrible.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I know people love to go back and look at stuff and be like, oh my God, I love this person's look. Because that's what I see like a lot with a lot of the younger fans, I'll say post 2000, so like millennial but born after 2000,
Right.
or even like in the late 90s, they didn't grow up seeing this stuff, so they don't have the context of the time that went along with what we saw. So when you go back and look at it, like, oh, this stuff's cool. It wasn't that cool. Really wasn't. It wasn't that cool, right? Like, this is back in the days of like the Man Show, and where you just had a show with dudes talking about nonsense, and you had chicks jumping on trampolines. What? Stupid.
But then again, that kind of programming isn't tailored to you or I.
Right.
Back then, as opposed to now either. Like, I wasn't interested in the TNA type stuff.
Right. It just didn't do anything. And like with pro wrestling, like that's why I was a WCW guy. Was the other.
Okay.
That's why I stuck with WCW so much, was because I didn't have to deal with so much of the ridiculous stuff. Because sure, all the pyro and Undertaker kidnapping Stephanie McMahon and all that stuff.
Put her on the cross.
Cool. It was trash. Naked Midian was a thing for a while.
Naked Midian, yes, he was a thing, yes.
Like it was just all bad. That's why a lot of us stuck with WCW or started watching ECW. Because if we want to get the ridiculous, we want to get the unfiltered ridiculous.
Yes, we'll get the real hardcore, air quotes, ridiculous.
Kimono Wanalea dancing upon the ECW.
We've talked about this in like 3 straight episodes. Have anyone seen the tape of Kimono Wanalea dancing atop the ECW arena?
I have, and we were sold a dream. We were sold a dream.
It was a striptease that never happened, right?
No, it happened.
Okay.
But basically what you saw in the commercial is what you saw in the video.
Oh, boo.
Yeah.
I remember Joey Styles' sales pitch about the whole thing. It's the night Sabu suffered a broken neck.
Yes, and Kimono Wanalea danced atop the
ECW arena. Like, what?
And like it was her, it was like, because at the time, that's how you sell. Boom, gotta have sex. So in that, you had sex and violence because ECW, right?
Yes.
So you have Kimono Wanalea dancing atop the ECW arena. You have Sabu getting his neck broken
by Chris Benoit.
Like, foreshadowing to what he does later on in his life.
Well, yeah. So all in all, after this episode of Dark Side of the Ring, we chronicled why the Brawl for All is a bad idea in terms of fighting. We've chronicled why people thought the Brawl for All was bad in terms of booking. We've even chronicled people's thought processes. Godfather, draws, Bart Gunn. So what are some things that stood out for you while watching it that maybe the viewer at home, it kind of bypassed them?
I think back then, like the biggest thing was them not understanding that these folks really couldn't fight.
Okay.
Because if you win, you fight. You won, right? They say you won the fight. That's what a lot of people just did because they didn't understand combat sports. Like this is a thing when Brock Lesnar became like a star in mixed martial arts. There was, is there going to be crossover between the two? And there's a pretty decent crossover between mixed martial arts fans because a lot of them grew up watching pro wrestling. Now, do those people then cross the aisle back over the pro wrestling? No, most of them don't. So you have a bunch of people that do not understand what actual combat looks like. And that's like the biggest takeaway that I get from that. Because like you still have these people that still think that like, to use the overused clip, it's still real to me, damn it. It's not. Like it's and like so Cornette said the thing in the beginning is like, oh yeah, it's not. I hate when people say it's fake. And this is one of those arguments of semantics, right?
Okay.
Because to me, yes, it is real that you are beating your bodies up. But this is still it's still fake. This is still choreographed. It's a fake fight.
It's not a real fight.
It's not a real fight. right? This is a
competition.
choreographed. This is a exactly. This is a choreographed dance of combat between two people. It's a fake fight. It just is, right? Do things happen and people get injured? Yes, people get injured in ballet all the time.
I hate that argument, by the way.
Right.
Oh, when they say, "Oh, it's not ballet," do you know how much abuse ballet dancers put on their
have you ever
body?
seen a ballet dancer's feet?
I have.
It's bad.
It's bad.
It looks like something that they dragged out of the sea. They all look. It's bad. Like there are more injuries in cheerleading than any other sport.
I've noticed that.
And cheerleading is absolutely a sport. That's another thing that people need to go ahead and accept as well. Like cheerleading is a sport. It's basically an impact sport at that.
Are people still claiming it's not?
Because it's cheerleading. They've been told like
it's still an athletic competition.
Yeah, like you have people that are throwing. These girls aren't small. This is the thing that's like, especially when you get up into college time, these are not. When you are a gymnast, right? The days of gymnasts being these 80-pound things that got left in the 80s.
Oh yeah,
these are solid, muscular women that are out here like really being able to do stuff that they never could have done in the bygone days, right? So you're having to go and lift up 125 pounds on one hand. You're having to hold this up. You're an athlete if you can do that type of stuff. For these women to be able to do these insane rotations in the air takes so much skill. Like it's right. So like this whole argument of like, oh well, it's not ballet. It's not. No, shut up.
And I find it funny that the people that say that are people who look as if they've never been athletic a day in their life.
In their life, right? It's kind of like the people that are like, with the whole coronavirus thing, people are like, oh yeah, 5G is the culprit for all this stuff. I was like, y'all are the same people that eat McDonald's every day and only drink soda. Your opinion means not to me. Fuck off. And it's that same type of thing here where like you have dudes, especially in pro wrestling. Vince McMahon's never really competed in anything. Right? Like, and we've heard these stories about him, thinking that he could fight someone. Who was it that he thought that he could? Was it? I don't know if it was Ken. It was somebody, but he would like, oh yeah,
Frank Shamrock.
Frank Shamrock would have ended that man's life. I don't think y'all understand. Frank Shamrock was the prototype for the modern day mixed martial artist. He could strike, he could grapple, he could do everything.
I can't believe he said that.
He would have ruined Vince McMahon. He would have done something heinous to Vince McMahon if they got into a fight.
Yep.
This tells you everything that you need to know about the people that put the Brawl for All into motion. People that had no concept of what they were actually doing. When you have a man with no combat sports thinking that they would be able to beat a multi-time champion in mixed martial arts, tells you everything you need to know.
It's ego, man. That's what it really boils down to. Everybody's got an ego, and some people let it run a little bit more rampant than they should. And that has you thinking you can take down Frank Shamrock. That has you thinking, as JBL, thinking he can whoop everyone's butt in the locker room. When Vince Russo even said, "There's 10 dudes here that could whoop your ass."
And I know for a fact there were dudes that were at the top of the card that could have whooped his ass back then. Like you notice, there's no Polynesians on that list, right? None of them. No Afa, no Sika, no Rikishi.
I would have loved to have seen Rikishi or Samu or Fatu. Bring back the Barbarian for that.
Y'all would have seen people like it'll look like a shotgun getting blasted in somebody's face, bro. It would have been brain matter everywhere. Like it is especially when you have people. So there's being tough because you had a couple bar fights, and then you have people that grew up fighting.
Right.
And if you know anything about island people, you grow up fighting. Doesn't matter what island it is, you grow up fighting. Whether you be in the Caribbean, Polynesian, South Pacific, England. When you grow up on an island, it's, I don't know why, but for some reason, fighting is just part of the culture.
Interesting.
And you just grow up having to fight. Because it's the only way to settle differences and such, right? So it is it's something. But yeah, this was like they had this was like the island of misfit toys, essentially. And they were like, let's have a tournament. See what'll happen.
And I don't think they really talked about how they came about selecting the people. I know they did the names out of the hat, but the initial 16,
yeah.
Was it by invitation only? Was it by who wants to do this? And they either said yay or nay.
I think it was probably a mixture of who wants to do this and then like, hey, we'll pay you such and such if you come on and do that stuff. Because at the time, Mark Merrow was still being booked relatively decent at the time. Like the Road Warrior Hawk still had name, cachet, and value and so on and so forth. So like you had people that had a little bit going on for them, but like, yeah, this was bad.
It was bad. And how people, I think where you and I lie is different than where a lot of wrestling fans lie in terms of they thought it was just bad wrestling television. It was just bad fighting.
Bad fighting, yeah.
It was bad fighting, the art of fighting was bad.
Yeah.
Just the sizzle did not match the steak in terms of fighting, and the repercussions from people's injuries
were long-standing.
Pride notwithstanding, just physical injuries.
Like you could go to any mixed martial arts event, amateur mixed martial art event right now, and you'll see better fighting.
Oh,
if you know anything about amateur mixed martial arts, that is you'll see people get submitted with Boston crabs, friggin' like I've seen people get tap out to things that essentially would look like a noogie. Like it's
right.
It's bad. It's very low level stuff. But Brawl for All was worse by a long shot. Like it's very bad.
And I think that's where you and I are. You know, that's the aisle we're standing on in regards to this. Just wasn't bad. It wasn't bad television from a wrestling standpoint. It was bad television from a fighting standpoint, and it just wasn't worth it. I mean, I know Bart Gunn probably thinks, "Hey, man, I got my 15 minutes of fame, and he will forever be tied to the Brawl for All." And there will be tons of wrestling purists out there who will die on the sword of Dr. Death Steve Williams should have won that. And then what could have been had Dr. Death won and gone on to do his main event program with Steve Austin, which a lot of people I've talked to, no, mid-card, upper mid-card was his ceiling.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that on another show. Everybody can't be everything.
No. And I've come to accept that with my favorite WWE wrestlers now, the Shinsuke Nakamura's, the Asukas. As much as I would rather they be in the main event, I understand they just can't. Your faves can't. Johnny Gargano's not coming up from NXT and main eventing WrestleMania. I'm sorry.
And also with them, I think they're happy that way too.
Yeah.
Like I think Asuka and Shinsuke are like living their best lives right now. Asuka's got her little YouTube channel, just happy.
And she could be a caricature on Raw and just be hilarious.
Like these people, other thing too. So we're a little bit off topic, I guess you say. These people are in their late 30s.
Yes.
And they've been doing this for 20 years. Shinsuke specifically. Not only did Shinsuke Nakamura had beat the shit out of his body for a long time in pro wrestling, he was also a mixed martial artist.
Yes, he was.
That's a lot of mileage. As Will Smith once said in Men in Black, he's got some city miles on him.
Drives a lot different in the city.
He just wants to go around and surf.
chilling with his fam and surfing.
Chilling with his fam and surfing. Like, as pro wrestling fans, we need to let go of this selfish thing that we have where we want our fave to. It's always masked in, I want my favorite to be champion. No, you want to see your favorite entertain you.
Yeah,
you don't actually want them to be a champion. You want them to entertain you, is what it is. And being a fan of combat sports is a selfish endeavor by nature, because you are watching people injure themselves for your entertainment. Right?
Yeah.
So with this, like, anytime I see wrestlers that sign with the WWE and people are like, oh, they're not using them well. I was like, I don't care. Are they happy? Like, the revival doesn't look happy. Sure, they're still young. Let them go. Whatever. I couldn't care less. But when you have somebody that has had a career that's 20 years now, let them do what they want to do.
Yeah, and if they just want to hashtag cash the checks, cash in the checks, let them do it. It's fine. I'm not mad that Shinsuke doesn't have to wrestle every pay-per-view. Right. He just looks like Shinsuke, acts like Shinsuke, does a run-in, and he's good. Collect that check. Asuka, literally the best part of Raw the last 3 weeks leading up to WrestleMania.
Part. This is an Asuka stan account.
Yes. And she doesn't have to be the Empress and whoop every girl's ass. No. She literally had a good match with Liv Morgan on Monday Night Raw. Mm-hmm. You could slot her in anywhere.
And it's going to be good.
And it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Shinsuke could work with anyone. And yes, he's probably not going to win the WWE Heavyweight Championship. The highest he can get was the Intercontinental title, I think. That was his perfect belt because that was what he was really known for in New Japan.
Yep.
Cool. And he's making his money. And he gets to be with his fam, and he's well off. That's why when people come over now, because I see it from that aspect of, if they're getting paid and they're still getting featured, even if it's just as an accessory, they're still getting checks. They're not back in catering. Right. They're still working house shows.
Still working house shows. Let them be happy doing what they're doing. And that's one of the things of all of this stuff where I'm just like, the longer, like, whether it be mixed martial arts or whatever, the fan base is always the worst part of all of it. It's never the
lot of fanatics in general. You know, fan is short for fanatic. So fans of any sport genre, the stands will inevitably be the divisive part of it, because they can't separate objectivity with fandom. Most people can't do that. Unfortunately for you and I can do that. And it took me a while with the Japanese contingent in WWE and the NXT talent that comes up. And hey, man, enjoy what you got with them. I've been able to see Johnny Gargano have good matches with people. I've been able to see Shinsuke wrestle Sami Zayn. Anytime on the network, I can go back and look at that.
The best matches that I've ever seen in my life.
Same. That's what brought me back to WWE programming.
We got to see that. He wasn't able to do that. Give us something classic like that in New Japan all those years. Oh, send him back to New Japan. He signed with the WWE for a reason. He's fucking tired of doing this shit.
Tired of beating his body.
He was tired of beating his body up. Like, let him do what he wants to do. Stop being selfish. That's what it all boils like. That's what basically so much of this stuff boils down to, right? Mm-hmm. And with Brawl for All as well, because this was a selfish endeavor by the WWF at the times, powers that be. Yes. Like, just selfishness has led to so many bad decisions in pro wrestling, and Brawl for All is like one of the shining examples of it.
Mm-hmm. And I think as we go along in the series of Dark Side of the Ring and any other kind of after dark wrestling topics, just that's it. It's going to boil down to, it always comes down to the promoter. Mm-hmm. It always going to come down to bookers who have this short-sighted view of something, and then a fan base added to the mix that are either going to poop all over it, or they're going to be xenophobes. Not xenophobes. They're going to be sycophants of just, I want this. I don't care. Give this to me, injected in my veins, as they say. And it's frustrating. Yeah, it takes the objectivity out of it.
There's a gif of Stephen Colbert, and he's like, Give it to,
Give it to me
now. Give
Mhm.
it to me now. That is pro wrestling fandom.
That is pro wrestling fandom. Mhm.
right.
And especially now that there's no sports,
Yeah.
that's all we got.
And that's the other thing too. So real quick,
Yeah.
selfishness, right? I understand that y'all want to see this shit. There's a pandemic going on right now. People do not need to be around other people. Like, you can go watch stuff on the network. I guarantee there's a whole host of things on the network that you've never seen before. And hey, there's other stuff that you can go explore as well. Like, I got into marble racing. That shit is amazing. Right?
I went down the Disney Plus hole. I'm watching all these animated Marvel shows that I may have saw as a kid or saw before. And I'm going back down it. I'm all right.
To go to. Like, you can go get into sumo wrestling.
Yeah, anything.
The Brawl shows are still going on right now, and that stuff is highly entertaining, and it's real combat. Like, I get it. You have a connection with these people sometimes on an emotional level, even though you've never met them in your life.
Which confuses me, but
it'll be okay, right? They still have families to go to, right? Like, Roman Reigns pulled out of WrestleMania because somebody showed up to work sick, right? You have people that have underlying issues that we don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you then be like, oh yeah, we're going to have this event and possibly spread that to somebody else? Yeah, that's some of the most selfish shit that I've ever heard in my life.
Yep. Like,
y'all are really out here being like, I don't care about anybody else. My entertainment comes first. Off.
You know, that's just, and as we get to keep talking about this series, that is the factor of selfishness. I feel a lot of it is wreaked in selfishness and staked in selfishness. Mm-hmm. And that is the thing we're going to keep seeing in all these episodes. And I think the next one that we're going to go back and do a season 1 overview. And I had just seen the Fabulous Moolah episode last week, and I know Dio has seen it and he wants to see it again. Man, listen, when we talk about that.
Oh, I got Moolah's gonna catch some hot ones. I'm gonna be damn if she's dead.
Even though I don't usually speak ill of the dead.
Fuck Moolah. Forever.
And I think that's the perfect way for me to end the show. Thank you for watching Damian G Sports. You can find the show on YouTube on my channel as well as Big Gold Belt's channel, biggoldbeltmedia.com, BGB Group on Twitter, myself, Damian G347 on both Instagram and Twitter, and Dio at I'm Just Dio and Dio.shoots. I believe that's the proper.
Yep, I still haven't fucking updated it. I need to.
One of these days he's going to update it, and then you can see his portfolio and buy his shit.
Yeah.
And this has been sponsored by both Big Gold Belt as well as Anchor.fm, your one-stop shop for podcast needs. And we will check you next time.